the brunt of the foreign interference was the CCP in China, which had tampered with our elections. Now, because he was in a coalition with Jagmeet or whatever, he decided to lobby these wild accusations against India, which really break with all types of Canadian precedent, okay? Canada is not America. We don't have show trials. Canada, in justice here, we basically run the whole trial, and then when it's done, then we talk about it publicly. So the fact that we've inverted it on a foreign affairs issue is insane. Is absolutely insane here. But again, he's surrounded by sort of his own incompetence and his own scandals. So we had a Chinese foreign interference scandal. Now it's really picking up, right? We have the inquiries going into it. We have the Liberals testifying. None of the answers make any sense. It is abundantly clear to anyone with half a brain cell who's been watching it that the Liberals are in full cooperation with the CCP in some ways, or at least 11 of them are. There's an internal revolt within his own caucus when him and the foreign minister left, when the adults left the Liberal Party, or the kids who, depending on your perspective, the MPs got together and started signing a petition to force Justin Trudeau to resign. So again, he's facing the specter of foreign interference and incompetence in real serious issues. So to me, it looks like he's trying to muddy the waters here, where he can say, look how tough I am on foreign interference. I kicked out a diplomat. I did this. I did this. I did this. I'm so tough on foreign interference. Well, he's allowing the CCP, the ISI, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Khalistanis, all of these people to full-on infiltrate the government, but he's acting tough against India because I think he thinks he can use India as a punching bag and kind of get away with it. And this would track with the behavior of a man who's always been more self-interested than he is interested in the well-being of the nation. So this might seem insane to some, but if you track Justin Trudeau's previous behavior, when being surrounded and facing scandals, lashing out at India to muddy the waters, doesn't seem so out of character in that respect.
Yes, you're saying that we've probably given him more credit than is due, because to an extent I agree with you. He seems to be this kind of person who's very reactive, not very well thought out. He doesn't think of the precipitate actions that will follow. He's clearly not very strong on geostrategy. But you're also absolutely right. In fact, that's the question I had put earlier in the day to Anis Faruqi, who's back with us, that Justin Trudeau takes exactly the opposite stand when it comes to the Chinese. He said Chinese officials may be individually involved, but you can never blame Xi Jinping. You can never blame Beijing. You can never blame the Chinese state. The Chinese state cannot be involved in manipulating the Canadian elections. While he admits there was manipulation, he draws a clear distinction between Chinese officials and the Chinese state, which is exactly the opposite of the stance that he has taken with India. On the breaking news story, we have the senior executive editor of the Republic Media Network, who follows the Ministry of External Affairs, the Prime Minister's office, and the highest echelons of the Indian government very, very closely. You will find this interesting, Daniel. Abhishek, how are we viewing this? You see, I think we have been taken a little bit by surprise by the way Trudeau's been behaving. He behaved very weirdly in the ASEAN. He was weird in the ASEAN, and we found his behavior absolutely childish and weird, because he literally tried to accost the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy down a corridor, forcing us to make a public statement saying there was no such meeting. So can you tell us what he did in ASEAN and how this links up with what he's done today? Well, and what are we planning to do from here?
Well, Arnav, so far as ASEAN is concerned, India made it absolutely clear that there was no talk whatsoever of any substance between the two leaders to warrant the kind of statement that Justin Trudeau has had made. So you are right, he was churlish, he was childish, and now it has become full-blown irresponsibility and breaking even news, a mischievous conduct on the part of the Canadian establishment, obviously egged on by their Prime Minister. Remember, for the first time perhaps in India's diplomatic history, we have named and shamed the Prime Minister by calling out Justin Trudeau's very personal hostility against India in the statement that was released early in the day, following which, of course, we issued a démarche and told the Canadian Charge d'Affaires in New Delhi that calling out India's High Commissioner's name as a person of interest is a crossing of a red line, and there would be consequences, following which we have recalled our ambassador. And while again continuing with the mischief, the Canadians are trying to present a picture or no that they are expelling our diplomats, even as we have taken the decision already. And remember, while it was day here, it was night in Canada, and they don't work at night in Canada. The announcement has come only 6 hours after India has already taken a decision. So obviously,
which means they don't know how to deal with it. You see, no, 1 minute. What this proves is that the Canadians expected us to go slow after their action and open up some line of communication. Whereas you see, they don't know how to deal with a Narendra Modi government. You know, we pull no punches approach. We have just sacked their diplomats, brought back ours, pushed the ball into their corner. And Abhishek, let me tell you this. I have been speaking to so many Canadians, if it's any dipstick, while, you know, all of them are not fans of India, and they do feel that we're a very strong country that wants our way in everything. That's the kind of sense we get. But they are no fans of Justin Trudeau either. Most of the people I've been speaking to from Canada feel that Justin Trudeau has not thought this out. They've not thought this out. So probably India is also aware of this sentiment in Canada. He's not gaining any fans in Canada for behaving like a trapeze artist on such issues. So what's our next move, Abhishek? What do you expect tomorrow morning?
Our next move is concerned, I spoke to some of the contacts in the Ministry of External Affairs, and they say that this is just a beginning, and we will match the steps. A red line has been drawn by India, and every time the Canadians cross that red line, there are going to be consequences in terms of diplomatic steps taken to, not only just match the steps, but to make sure that there is pressure on the Canadian side to not indulge with this pro-Khalistani sentiment, as a consequence of which, Arnab, very interestingly, I can see for the first time perhaps the Deputy Chief of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police perhaps has made an admission for the first time that there are pro-Khalistan elements in Canadian society. Remember, earlier they would only say Canadian citizens and freedom of expression. Tonight they are saying South Asian community and specifically members of the pro-Khalistan movement. And they have also said that India is also facing extremism and violence, and we are going to work together. So there is already a subtle climb down building up. The Canadians are blinking, and they are going to be the first one to blink, because remember, they are on the wrong side and they know it in their heart what they have been up to with all the protection.
And the other thing is that the entire political establishment of India, the entire population and political establishment of India on this one is strongly behind Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Mr. Pekin, I had opposition leaders on my program, which is the most watched program in the country, and they all came and they said, we may have political differences, but we stand behind Prime Minister Modi. Canada has gone too far. That's not the sentiment I get from Canada. But tell me, Mr. Pekin, this group that is this extreme jihadi, Khalistani, Islamist, ISI, extreme liberal group, how strong are they politically to be useful for, or is he going to lose out more than he's going to gain, Trudeau?
Well, I can't speak to the influence of, Khalistanis in particular. I can't speak to the influence of Sikh Canadians in general, which is quite substantial. They're a very large population in certain leading and growing Canadian cities. And this is part of an issue that we face in general in Canada, is that a lot of what we do in terms of our foreign policy actually is more about diaspora management at home rather than foreign policy abroad. So it's not anything that's specifically limited to our relationship with India. It also manifests itself in our relationship with Russia. It manifests itself in our relationship with China. And these are some strategic decisions we're going to have to take.
But shouldn't you have your independent foreign policy? Is Canadian policy going to be determined by only India and China?
No, I agree. I think we should have a more substantive and independent thought-through foreign policy. Unfortunately, these things, are hostage right now to dynamics that are being played out domestically. And here's where I'll disagree with Daniel, by the way. I don't think that this has to do, with anything about Justin Trudeau's own personal background, or any accusations that Daniel made that he doesn't have the national interest at heart. I'm not going to question the Prime Minister's patriotism. I think that we have a bipartisan issue in Canada in which we've had now two consecutive Prime Ministers, Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau, who had no experience whatsoever in cabinet before becoming Prime Minister, whereas previous Prime Ministers had very substantive cabinet experience as Minister of Justice or as Minister of Finance, etc. And the next Prime Minister, in all likelihood, Pierre Poilievre, who's currently the leader of the opposition, also has very little substantive high-level government experience. So the institutions of government in Ottawa and the ability and the skills necessary to navigate them are being hollowed out, at the same time as our own foreign ministry is also being hollowed out. we have much more of a managerial class right now running the foreign ministry rather than bright up and coming folks with the ideas that made Canada a much more significant player on the world stage before. Not to say that we can regain that role necessarily, but there needs to be a discussion in Canada about the nature of our national interests, where they stop and what we're prepared to sort of posit as an actual red line. What is it that is an absolute must-have versus what are the nice-to-haves? And we don't really have that discussion. We're constantly reacting, and we're a very easy punching bag because unlike the United States, which is a superpower, and the European Union, which is a major regulatory power, we're neither of those things, which makes it harder for us to have an independent foreign policy. But if we do want to have an independent foreign policy, if that is a national goal, then we have to, have a clear bipartisan discussion about, where actually the lines are, where we draw a line, where we don't. And as Daniel was rightly saying, it was domestic political considerations, the idea.
Daniel, you want to respond, Daniel?
Yeah, about not wanting to repeat the China fiasco. That was the consideration at hand here. That plus, domestic, diaspora management.
I take
that's
that
has to be overcome.
Daniel?
Yeah. Listen, I think Zachary and I agree on a lot. There's some disagreements here. I mean, listen, I think there's a confluence of factors that have led to this. So to say, there's one unified thing that comes here. I mean, this is a confluence of failures, right? Our foreign policy being held hostage to domestic statutes it is a big problem. I mean, even the foreign minister got admitted that to Tom Mulcair, the former leader of the NDP, that she's dictating Israel policy based on her own riding's demographics. So this is a big problem. There's a lot of things. I would posit that the ideological infiltration among the Liberal Party deep into it from certain ideologies, whether it be Khalistanis, Islamists, CCP, is having an effect here, right? I do think there is a finger on the scale. Even the Indian government now pointed out that the cabinet was overrun with what they seem as, opposing ideologues. So I'm willing to say, yeah, there's a confluence of failures here that have led to a breakdown in international relations between Canada and India. Right? There's no real reason why we should be having a fight with India.
There isn't.
There isn't really.
There really
so this
isn't.
is sort of, you're right. So this is like our immigration crisis. This is totally self-manufactured. Now, there isn't one reason why there's an immigration crisis. I mean, Canada's immune from it geographically, ocean to the left, ocean to the right, ice up top, richest country in the world to ourselves. Yeah, we have a mass migration crisis because we've created one. We sort of have a foreign policy crisis because we've kind of created one for ourselves. Is there domestic political considerations? I think so. Is there foreign political considerations? Is there, extremist infiltration? And is there just, with the Trudeau government, general incompetence could lead to a lot of this? I wouldn't rule out any of these factors. My read on this is I see some corruption and fragility within the institutions. Now, there could be 5 different pressure points coming on here, but I think if you didn't have, Khalistanis within cabinet for the last 10 years, this probably wouldn't happen. If you didn't have, the mass, the foreign interference scandals with China being exposed, this probably doesn't happen. If you didn't have what Zach described as, our sort of being, running foreign policy at a local level, this doesn't happen. So
no, but I think also I take that, Daniel, and I can only say that actually it would be much better if India and Canada would have worked together against all these forces who are essentially on the borderlines or active terrorists, because eventually this can really, really, really badly hurt Canadian interests. I mean, Canada has been the victim there, with more than 250 Canadians killed in the hijacking of the Air India 182. And I don't think this present generation of Canadians should be allowed to forget that. And Anis, you just said that people who are persecuted, we must let them walk into Canada. I can understand that, from where you are taking a very pro-Trudeau, pro-Canada position, or maybe you want to take an anti-India position. I'm not. But, at the end of the day, recently we had a Pakistani national, Mohammad Shahzab Khan, who was arrested. He had entered Canada illegally on a study visa. And he was planning major terrorist attacks in New York, targeting the Jewish community. So it should not be assumed by you that people who we declare as international terrorists, you have this approach, oh, you declared them as international terrorists, what does it matter? But if the United States targets them, declares them as a designated terrorist, it matters. These are people who have killed Indians. These are people who have targeted and killed and carried out assassinations and continue to plan assassinations in India. This ultra-liberal approach, I do not understand. These are people living on your soil. You could have someone walking in a mall near you, Anis, who has carried out a rocket attack on the Punjab Police Intelligence Headquarters, and we are telling you that if you have any friendship with us, who are these people? Why don't you listen to us? They are carrying out and planning rocket attacks on Indian soil, targeting the Indian security agencies, but the approach of the Trudeau government is we couldn't care less. That's not a very friendly approach.
Arnab,
that's a wrong approach.
This clearly shows Canada takes terrorism very seriously, regardless.
If you take terrorism very seriously, one minute, just one minute. If you take terrorism seriously, how are you harboring all these terrorists on your soil? These are gangsters and terrorists. These are not social activists. You very well know their activities.
No, I understand, Daniel, where you're coming from, but my point is, Canada is taking terrorism very seriously, and that's why they took action on expelling the Indians who had established links.
You take terrorism seriously, then tell me, why do you fast-track the citizenship of a person who has an Interpol red corner notice against him? Please understand, what skills does he bring to your country? Is he a computer scientist? Is he a rocket scientist? But a person with an Interpol red corner notice, what kind of liberal attitude is this? That we have to be the safe haven for these people. Tomorrow they will target your children, your society, your communities. You see, you're probably making a strategic mistake here. And we don't understand this view of what Canada is doing to itself. Tomorrow this will be done in British Columbia and Toronto and Ottawa, let me tell you.
And then
don't think it won't sting back home.
And then we will provide you the evidence. And then you will say, oh, why these people are not, they don't come from India, right? So why would a nation expel the diplomats of a country without any substantial evidence?
Tell me one thing.
One country who does that?
And tell me which country has 1 minute silence in its parliament for a person who is a terrorist? Would Indian parliament have a 2-minute silence for Osama bin Laden? How would the Americans react? What are you talking about? The shoe pinches when it's on the other foot.
What I'm talking about is that somebody coming on Canadian soil and killing our citizen.
You have not given a shred of evidence. You're only saying they have. You have had 13 months, no evidence.
It is
13 months, no evidence.
It is about a sovereign nation. It's about Canada, and regardless
we respect your sovereignty.
Next prime minister, they will do the exactly same what is being done right now. So it is not about.
But why don't you give the evidence for your own people? Where is your evidence?
It is not about
planting stories in Washington Post is not evidence.
Saying it's about liberal. Yeah, you can take an anti-Justin Trudeau stance. I'm not pro-Justin Trudeau. I'm pro-Canada. I'm just laying out the simple facts that if it could be next prime minister, we will do the same thing which is being done right now on the diplomatic front. It is not about a war. It is just a diplomatic norm that we are.
I want to understand from you. You are taking this position. I'll ask Daniel. Daniel, I don't understand this. You see, you reject the extradition requests of named terrorists from India, right? They have Interpol red corner notice, blue corner notice. You fast-track their immigration and make them Canadian citizens. For what joy? Why do you make them? Are you under internal political pressure to make them Canadian citizens? You don't want to extradite them? Yeah, please, Daniel.
Okay, so this is currently the top economy in Canada. So we shut down the resource economy in 2015 when Trudeau came in. We have tons of resources, but we need to be green, and green means buying your oil from Saudi Arabia halfway across the world instead of producing it domestically. So how do you supplement that? And we basically supplemented the resource industry with a human trafficking and money laundering scheme called an immigration system. So by fast-tracking the student visas, essentially you pay $20,000, $30,000 to go to a diploma mill college, which is, a classroom that's empty inside a strip mall that shares the same room with like 8 other schools. You do one online course per week, And then you get trafficked into either a Khalistani gang or the LMA scams. And there's tons of kickbacks within the people connected, right? Whether it be business interests or the parties themselves which finance off this. So that's why people are coming into Canada unvetted en masse, because it's an economy. It's a money laundering and human trafficking scheme that is now the backbone of the Canadian economy. It's also, we call it education too. So it's education and immigration is sort of a euphemism for human trafficking and money laundering now. So because you have this, you have the Liberal government, which doesn't want anyone to look into it. Now you also have a Liberal government philosophically under Justin Trudeau, which is vastly different from the sort of John Pitchent, Paul Martin Liberals, where Justin Trudeau is what you would call on the woke critical race theory type spectrum. He's always been very, very friendly to anti-Western ideologies. His love affair with the Islamic Republic of Iran is well documented. His brother worked for Press TV, which is one of their propaganda channels. Justin Trudeau rewarded them when they murdered a Canadian citizen, Syed Kapsamani, tried to, make relations more friendly after they murdered a Canadian. And in response, the IRGC shot down a airliner filled with dozens of Canadian citizens. And, Trudeau has been incredibly soft on them. So being soft on Khalistani terrorism isn't the only type of terrorism he is soft on. This is a pattern of behavior of Justin Trudeau, is anyone who's sort of ideologically radical and possesses anti-Western views. He has the sort of Obama mentality where he can hug the terrorism away by getting up.
Daniel,
and,
shouldn't his popularity would be going skyrocketing if he was doing those things? So why is he 33% right now? Tell me, explain.
That goes against what you said earlier today. That goes against totally what you said earlier today when you said please don't ever link what's happening with domestic Canadian politics. Can you tell me, since you're taking this position, what was the profession of this person called Nijjar, who you have stuck your neck out for, put Canada's economy on the line, Canada's relationship with India on the line, the person you're fighting for tooth and nail, the person who has been killed, who you say, all of Canada, every Canadian citizen is fighting for. Can you tell me what his profession was? What is your information about it?
Can you tell me what are you basing on?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm basing on. Okay, 1 minute. I'll tell you what I'm basing on. Abhishek will tell you. My information is that your country had put this man who you claim to be innocent on a no-fly list. Abhishek can tell you more. Why did you put him on a no-fly list? The person you had 1 minute silence in the parliament for, Abhishek, didn't Canada consider him so dangerous that they put him on a no-fly list?
Well, yes, absolutely, Arnab. And in fact, he was put on no-fly list because the Canadians thought that he was a threat to their national security, following which
exactly
the United States put him on no-fly list. Also, Arnab, not only that, all his bank accounts were frozen because the Canadians thought that their national security would be compromised if money is transacted through his accounts. And the investigation or the information was revealed by an investigation carried out by their own newspaper, the Globe and Mail. So the Canadians can't say that this is an Indian plant or etc.
That is the question I'm asking here. That's the question, Mr. Pekin. No. So I'm saying here, look at the weird case of this man. He's a red corner, blue corner, notice Interpol guy, extremely dangerous, designated terrorist, known for killing and terrorist charges on Indian soil, twice denied immigration, then suddenly fast-tracked into citizenship, given protection by the Canadian security forces while being put on a no-fly list. Very weird behavior. It's the Canadian. Who is this man? Mr. Pekin, the Canadians must ask. No, who are you sticking you are sticking your country's reputation. You are sticking out your entire country's reputation for this man? What Canadian icon is he? Why was he on a no-fly list?
To understand, Arnab, that
he was on a no-fly list because you thought he could carry out a hijacking.
To send assassin to a sovereign nation.
Why was he on a no-fly list?
Because you have some kind of.
Why was he? You put him on a no-fly list. Why did you put him on a no-fly list? Would you put Mr. Pekin on a no-fly list? Would you put Daniel on a no-fly? Obviously, the man had done something. He was sinister, dangerous.
Trudeau might put me on a no-fly list.
That means you can just go ahead and kill him.
No, I'm not saying kill him, but tell me, why did you put him on a no-fly list?
So this is what the problem is. We are not arguing about what Canadians have done. They have put him on the no-fly list. They have done their due diligence, but that does not means that anyone can from the foreign land can come in my
you agree
land
he's a shady guy.
People and
you agree he's a shady kind of guy.
It's not going to happen.
Is he a shady guy?
Could be. Could not
So
be,
Justin
maybe not.
Trudeau
Do you
is
have
sticking
evidence?
out the country's
Show it to me.
reputation for a shady guy. Would Canadians like that? Mr. Pekin,
I think, with all due respect, Arnab, I mean, whether or not Mr. Nijjar was a shady guy is not at issue here. I think we just have to deal with the broader issues surrounding Canada's immigration system, which are well documented at this point. Now, I come from the perspective of someone who's very pro-immigration. I associate myself with, the Century Initiative and others. Don't speak on their behalf, but I very much associate myself with their vision of the idea of having a Canada of 100 million by the end of this century, because that would be a country that's more consequential in the world. But the question is, if you're going to make that a national strategic priority, what resources
no, would
are
you
going to
make all
allocate to
Hamas members Canadian citizens by that logic? Should
No,
all
I would
members
not.
of the Hamas and Hezbollah get fast-tracked into a Canadian citizenship?
Absolutely not. And the issue is that in setting these high immigration goals, unfortunately, there have been people who have gone through the cracks, and clearly there's,
So this man has gone through the cracks. He has an Interpol notice. He's rejected twice. He's then fast-tracked immigration, given round-the-clock Canadian security, put on a no-fly list, and is into gang wars with others.
Yeah,
And you're sticking out your country's reputation for him without a shred of evidence put in the public domain about any Indian involvement. Who's got to explain here, Mr. Pekin? Canada or India?
I think we've established at this point that this was a strategic mistake by Prime Minister Trudeau at the get-go. It's not clear what the end game was. If anything, it was domestic politics that were driving this. So there was clearly not a considered, analysis of Canada-India relations at the time and what the risks ultimately were to the relationship and how important this relationship was. Because we saw Canada's relationship with China and India both go into the tank. Around the time when Canada was publishing its Indo-Pacific
in
strategy.
August, you changed your immigration laws in which 70,000 deserving Indian students, you want to throw them out of the country while giving some kind of ultra-special treatment to people with a terrorist angle. So
yeah, my sense is just that Arnab,
every Indian student coming there would be spending 50,000 Canadian dollars a year to live in Canada. That helps your economy, but I
agree.
Yeah, but then you're compromising everything for this.
I know.
For this one guy.
I think an issue.
Why is he that guy so special?
I think these are different institutions of government in Canada that have difficulty speaking to each other, right? So you've got certain priorities that are set on the immigration front. There's pressure to get certain numbers. Things go through the cracks. Then there's other institutions of government that are not necessarily on the same page. We've seen this happen in Canada recently as well when it comes to the victims of communism memorial, right? In which there are folks at the Canadian Foreign Ministry who are fully aware of the risks of including potential people on that list of people who are victims of communism.
We are all,
who are, for example, have an association with fascism. Canada's Heritage Ministry, which was responsible for the monument, wasn't.
Everybody knows, right?
Point here is there are also.
We all have
Just one quick point.
Abhishek wants to make a point, but I just feel to break away all. Yeah, Abhishek.
There is a part of a speech that Nijjar made in 2021 that I want to read. Quote, "We will have to take up arms. We will have to dance to the edge of swords. Those who advocate peaceful methods need to leave them behind. What justice we will get this way." So essentially, he was an agent provocateur. He was someone who was absolutely pro-violence. And he said this from the soil of Canada. So Canadians, before they become his protectors, should understand that he was a threat to and they understood that he was a threat to their national security. Despite that, if they are doing this, obviously there is a larger agenda, there is a larger motivation, obviously, to pin India down.
Okay, we are going to close this right now in just a minute or so. I would only say this, that Canada has today broken all diplomatic courtesy, without evidence has made charges and started a diplomatic war. The ball is in their court. There is no evidence, and Trudeau says you can never blame China even if Chinese diplomats are involved. And in India's case, without any evidence, he says, let's break off the India-Canada relationship. I think the people of Canada are smart enough to decide. Ladies and gentlemen, I can only say besides Anis, not much open support coming in for Trudeau. I thank you, Daniel. This has been lovely. I thank you, Mr. Pekin. I thank Abhishek for this. And I thank Anis as well. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a breaking news development today. I expect much more on this Much more on this tomorrow. We're going back to the debate now.
Time for a quick breather. Arnab will be right back with the debate.
13,000 placements last year. At Amity, we are committed to nurturing passionate, hardworking and proactive professionals.
I don't care for no songs and proses. I don't care for no sweet boys with roses. All I want is a touch of love.